Welcome back to another episode of Building Up Your Business, the podcast. I am your host, Erica Dill with Operationally Up. Remember, we are here to help your operations and e-commerce business scale by hitting maximum profitability and working on that supply chain. Today is another great episode. We're talking about seed, scale, sustain. What founders need at every single stage. And we're joined today by Tanjina Shapiro. So glad to have you, Tanjina.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this call.
I know, so am I. With 20 years of experience leading operations, product, and customer success in startups, high-growth tech, and mission-driven companies, she's scaled teams at places like Curation Health and Evolent Health, co-founded a first-market tech platform, and is known for making complex simple while helping founders scale without burning out their people or losing customer trust. Now, as a Drop-In COO, she does all of that and more, helping companies rally a team around a clear path forward on their way through growth, which is great because as we're talking about founders and building businesses throughout a bunch of different scales, Tanjina will be able to help us walk it through it. So without any further ado, let's start with big picture before we kind of work our way to the nitty gritty. Tanjina, how do a company's needs evolve as it moves from those early scrappy startup stages through the growth and into that real professional company?
I love this question, and you used a golden word that I want to pick up on, which is the how do companies evolve? So really, business is a constant evolution, but sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you forget about that, right? So evolution of a business is you go from scrappiness to scalability. And so you and I, as fractional leaders, work with companies of different sizes. When you're first early on and you're in the seed stage, you as a founder are really wearing all these different hats, right? Yeah. It's all about the product market fit, and it's about who you are and who you serve, right? Once you get from that stage into what you're calling the scale is all about team capacity, role clarity, and systems and rhythms that help you with the execution. And then the sustainability is all about leadership alignment, cross-functional integration, and really just anchoring your profitability to sustainable growth. So I think about that. So I love that question around evolution because we are as a business is in a constant evolution, and it's about like how does your leadership style as a founder need to change, and how do you care for the people and the process as well as the clients through this process. So one of the things that I often talk to my clients about is it's a simple framework, which I call the CARE framework. It's about clarity, alignment, rhythm, and energy. And I'd love to get more into it with you in this conversation.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to that. I think our listeners are as well. And I love that you were talking about, companies evolving and the needs of the companies evolving. And I think that really ends up talking to the evolution of the leader themselves, like being that different founder and being who that, I'm probably totally stepping on your toes, being, the type of founder and business leader that company needs at each and every stage. So I'm really looking forward to what you're going to share with us. So before we kind of get into the CARE framework and what is needed at those different stages, how could a founder really understand if they're stuck in a previous phase?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think a lot of the times, I think about it in terms of different phases, in terms of the number of employees. So usually in my experience, I've noticed that, in the early growth stage, which you're looking at about 15 to 35 employees, the founder needs to go from being a doer to being a leader, right? And that transition is sometimes hard because when you first started, remember we were talking about the different hats, you were wearing all those different hats. So doing was how you survived and how you got your business to the next stage, right? But once you get to that early stage, when you start to have 10 to 15 employees and scale them up to about 35 employees, then you need to step back as the doer and start to be the leader. So going from visionary to a coach mode is one of the first things that I often see and support founders when they're struggling at that stage. The next stage, I think about it as the misalignment problem, right? So that is when you have about 35 to 60 employees. You've got managers in seats, but roles and responsibilities are fuzzy.
Yeah.
You're still addressing service level issues, right? It's kind of like whack-a-mole. Let's fix it and let's move on because it's all about speed over accuracy. You're
Yeah.
smiling and laughing because I know you know all
I'm trying not to be like, uh-huh, uh-huh. I'm trying to be like, oh, that's yes, I've been there.
Exactly, exactly. So that's really the misalignment phase is that again, so there, what's happening and what I notice with a lot of founders is that now you have product market fit. So product is not where you're focusing so much of your attention as it is the people role fit. So this is where, blending the tactic with the strategic and also making sure that you have the right people in the right seats doing the right jobs. And Erica, I cannot tell you how many times when I work with founders, this is the hardest part because
Yeah.
sometimes at this stage of the organization, the people who had joined you at, 1 to 10, they've overstayed their course. Like maybe they're not
Yeah.
evolving as your business is evolving. Maybe they're not interested in where your business is going. But oftentimes, founders and leaders struggle to let people go. And so
Yep.
the way that they address that problem is okay, let's hire more people. So throwing more people at the problem doesn't solve the problem. You have to address who's no longer the right fit. And also, as your company is growing, what are the right skill sets and what are the jobs to be done and who's the right person to do that job. So that marriage, if you want to call it that, is really where I see a lot of the issues in that sort of misalignment phase. The next one
You
I think
know,
about. Mhm.
oh, so sorry. I was just going to say, I was talking to somebody the other day and we were talking about the difference between founder-led and professionally led companies. And one
Yes.
of the big things, you're smiling and nodding your head because I know that you understand. But one of the big things that we talked about is in founder-led businesses, especially that are maybe family-run, there is
Mhm.
that real struggle of like having those long-term employees and having those family members who are,
Yes.
die hard and with you, but is that what the company actually needs? And that is a really tough bite to swallow.
And it is, and I think it's in the way that we've structured our employment and our engagements with companies, right? Because oftentimes it is viewed as, well, I'm going to start at this company, and this is where I'm going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at it from the perspective of we're hiring XYZ for these reasons, and
Mm-hmm.
let's go back to the evolution, right? The business is going to evolve and the humans in that business are going to evolve. At some point, there's going to be a mismatch. And when that happens, I always say, when it comes to feedback, clear, kind, and direct is my motto,
Yep.
right? Let's have that conversation and let's understand where this individual may be best to shine at, whether it's within that company or elsewhere, right? So I
Right.
think, we could probably have another podcast session, my friend, around, how to take care of employees within your organization, especially in light of what's happening in the
Yeah.
workforce right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I didn't mean to cut you off. You were on a roll there with being
Oh yeah,
stuck.
no,
Please
I was just gonna
continue.
say it's like when I think about the stages, another stage which we're very familiar with is what I call that silo effect, and this is where
Mm.
I've noticed that typically in companies where there's like anywhere from 60 to 9,500 employees, everyone's all about like because it's information overload, and so you're just trying to figure out what do I need to do today for my team, my department, right? So departments start to operate in silos. This is where the clarity of in terms of where you're going, what is your business, why did you start your business, right? What was the
Mm-hmm.
North Star? Having that clarity creates that alignment across the functions so that you don't have critical handoffs are not falling through the cracks. People are not feeling burnt out because we know and we are living this experience right now, right? Burnt out people, you
Yeah.
lose that expertise when they leave the company, right?
Yep.
And so it's to me, it feels at that stage, what the founder really needs to do is, again, coach, but also a facilitator, right? Figuring out where are the places where there are cracks, and rather than just hoping that it will figure itself out or fix itself, leaning in with your leadership team to understand, where do I, as a founder, do I need to clarify the vision of where we're going, and what do I need to do to support the alignment across the cross-functional teams.
You know, you said two things that I instantly was like, oh man, we got to talk about that. I'm going to like keep a little list over here as we go. One of the things that you talked about is, you know, making sure everybody understands where that North Star is. And I'm rereading Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Because it's very pertinent to one of the clients that I have right now, and I love that book. But you know, that again is very much like, do you have a North Star? Are you vocalizing it? Are you hiring? And is your team, you know, aligned with that North Star? Because if they are, that takes away, you know, so many of the other challenges that might be going on. So I'm sure that you use a lot of that in your work.
Yes, absolutely. And it's one of the things I will say is, sometimes folks get like, oh, North Star, now we have to sit down and do a all-day workshop on mission, vision, values. No, you know what your North Star is. It can be a 1 hour conversation. Where are we
Right.
misaligned? What do we think? What do we think we're working towards? And then just get clarity on that, and then come up with a plan that is a 60, 30, 60, 90 days. Because yes, the market is going to change, things are going to shift. You can adjust and, let's say, evolve as the market changes, but at least you have clarity. And because what is the opposite of clarity, right? It's just chaos.
Chaos.
So
Yeah.
if you're going to, and this is where the care model comes in, E is for energy. If you're going to spend all this time managing the chaos, wouldn't it be amazing if we just managed the clarity?
Yep, absolutely. It's interesting because a lot of times, I love that you said this, you know, I see two things. One, I see companies with no mission or vision, and they're like, well, we know where we're going. And it's like, but do you? Does everybody else know? I don't know. You probably should have that. It's kind of important. But number two is they feel like once they write it down, like, first of all, like you said, it's going to take hours and hours and days and days. And it's like, no, this is an exercise. You can do this. Like, it does not need to, yes, you need to put care into writing it, but it does not need to be, like you said, an entire weekend retreat to do it.
Yes.
Do it right, spend the right amount of time. But the other thing too is that, like, your company is evolving, and a lot of times founders that I've met feel like it traps them in, and it's like, no, this is a freeing experience. And they're so
Yes.
resistant to putting things down because they're like, well, we want to be nimble, and that's part of being a startup. And I'm like, a mission or a vision does not lock you into anything. If it does, you're probably writing the wrong mission and vision statements.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
these should be freeing. You should feel like this now guides you in a direction that you
Exactly.
want to go in. So those are some interesting things that I would love to agree with you on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't need to be a whole boil the ocean, but without
Yes,
clarity,
exactly.
chaos is what is happening in the organization. So might as well take the reins and clarify, because because at the end of the day, everyone in your company is looking to do good work, right? And
Yes.
the company exists for a mission, right? It is there to serve a need, serve a customer. So, again, this is where my sort of design thinking background comes in. And I'm like, who is the customer and what do they care about? You know,
Absolutely.
Once you start to answer that question very, very clearly, all of this chaos, this silos, these like turf conflicts, all of that stuff gets resolved, because now everyone is working towards this one customer profile or one pain point or one need that you're solving in the marketplace, and doing a heck of a good job in that.
Absolutely. One of the other things that I would love to have you dive deeper on is, you know, you talked about the founder wearing all the hats and, you know, going to, guiding that team and that leadership team in the direction of that North Star. And I'd love to dig deeper on that specific mind shift of the founder from when they are wearing all the hats to building that leadership team, because I think you'll agree that right there is a huge mental mind shift, and knowing when to bring in those leaders, those senior leaders, and how to bring them in, I think is probably, I'm guessing, but I already know the answer, a big part of what you talk to. A big part. I know you so well that I can already tell. A big part of what that mind shift takes, and that journey that you lead them down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I think about mindsets, it starts with the founder first, right? And so that is really a lot of like my initial engagement with clients is about really understanding what are the behaviors, habits, and beliefs of the founder, because believe it or not, it is permeating within the organization, whether
Oh,
you're aware of it or
absolutely.
not, right? And
Absolutely.
so going back to the early stage when you are wearing all the hats, it's all about control, right? You as the founder and the leader need to have control because you're still building the plane while you're flying it. You don't know what's
Absolutely.
going to work, what's not going to work, and you're the best person to be able to pivot at a moment's notice and figure out where to go. But then as you start to build out a team, you get to 3, 10, 15, 20, 30 people, it goes from control to trust. And that's where the delegation becomes so important. And this is where oftentimes I see founders struggle, not because they don't want to give up the control, they just don't know how it will get done because it's not going to be done in their way. And that's the
Yep.
thing, is that the
Yep.
first thing I say is that just let go of the how. The how is now the person that you hired. That's their problem to solve. You clarify what the outcome needs to look like. Not just a task list, but what does the end result need to look like? What is the definition of done, right? Once you paint that
Yes.
picture, you bet your team is going to get you there. And the how doesn't matter because they are bringing a new perspective, a new way of doing things, and that's why you hired them. So it goes, in the early stage, it goes from sort of, I think of it from control to trust. And then it's also as your company is growing and scaling, it goes from being an expert to being a coach. That's also another area where I see founders struggle, is that you started the business based on your expertise. And at some point, you have to sort of, again, let go and be the coach so that somebody else can take the baton and carry it forward. That's usually an area where sometimes founders will struggle with the coaching aspect of it. And that's totally fine. And this is where I think you probably also experience in your work. Fractional resources and leadership can really come in because we've built and led teams, and we can help to upskill and up level, and that way you as a founder stay within your zone of genius, and we do what we're good at. So I think it's a great partnership when you go from being the expert to being the coach.
Well, and one of the exercises that I really like to do with my clients is a Venn diagram, right? So there's three
Mm-hmm.
circles, and it's what is the founder good at, what do they like to do, and what does the
Yeah,
business need? And wherever they
I love it.
overlap, like that's where you double down your founders' true experiences, work, and their focus. And then you learn how to, like you said, paint the picture of what done is. That's one of my favorite things. And hire the right people to fill in those voids, and that's how you help. But like you said, there is a mindset shift, say that 5 times fast, in how to get there, and how to really know that this is what the next step it is, to really
Mm-hmm.
scale your business.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and then the last one I would say is for me is around sort of having that boundaries. And when I say boundaries, I mean, having like a boundaries around your time, like where are you going to focus your time and attention on, and that directly impacts your energy. So going
Yeah.
back sort of to the care model, like that is your energy. And then the last thing is emotional detachment to a particular outcome, right? Oftentimes, what founders or even leaders at that point at the of a scalability and sustainability stage, the challenge they face is that they are too wedded to the outcome, and there's a lot of emotional baggage that gets tied into that. And so it's like, how can we separate and have a healthy boundary of, regardless of the outcome, here's how we're going to solve this problem. We're going to look at it at every different angle. We're going to come up with solutions. And then at some point, we just need to let it go and trust that it will get done, and it will get done in the way that it needs to be done.
And that can be a tough pill to swallow for some founders. And I think, like you said, that's where, fractional leadership or senior leadership can really help work with the founder to get through some of those steps.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, because sometimes you just need an outside perspective because,
Yes.
again, whether I'm working with clients in a fractional capacity or doing advisory and coaching work, sometimes when you are close to the problem, and you and I are the same way, right? As we're running our own businesses, sometimes we are so close to the problem that we don't see the answer, even if it's in front of us, right? And
Yep.
so having somebody who can be that sounding board, who can be that truth teller of like, hey, you're going in the right direction, or you're too close to this. Oftentimes within an organization, employees or team leaders may not be willing to be that honest and that upfront, right?
Oh,
But
absolutely.
I find my role as a fractional is to be the truth teller, right? You're hiring me to do a job. You're hiring me to take you from A to B, and we need to find the best path possible from A to B.
Yep. I always tell people, you're not going to like what I have to say
Mm-hmm.
75% of the time. So I
Oh, I
apologize
love
ahead
that.
of time, but that's not my job. My job is not to tell you the things you want to hear. My job is to tell you probably the tougher things and the things you don't want to hear, but I will always give you a solution or multiple solutions of how we can move through
And
this and
move.
move past it. And that's
Absolutely.
truly what the relationship is about.
Yes, exactly. And I love that.
I think the other thing that's really important, and a lot of founders already do this, is they have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who they can bounce these ideas off of. You have a senior leadership team that you can consult and guide, and then you have a mentor, somebody who's done this before, somebody you could pick up the phone and be like, is this stupid? Am I crazy? Or am I on the right track?
Right, right. Yeah, you definitely need those like advisors, mentors, and sounding boards, people who can tell you what needs to be done in a thoughtful manner, but also making sure that you have evaluated the pros and cons of things. Especially,
Yeah.
and that's why I go back to that whole energy and boundaries, is because once you let go of it needs to be this way, or this is the outcome that has to come to, then you open up your perspective and you open up to different ideas and different possibilities.
Absolutely. So we talked a lot. I love your foundation. I love the care analogy there. But talk to me about, are there certain types of systems that can help founders kind of move through these that you would recommend?
Yeah, so it's I think about it in terms of like systems it tends to be a loaded term, and whenever you use the word systems, people are like, oh, it's going to be a tool. No, so I think about it from the perspective of rhythms and rituals, right? So earlier we were talking a little bit about the beliefs, the behaviors, and the habits, right?
Yeah.
And that we haven't even talked about the whole piece around culture. Those form the culture of the
Mm,
organization, right? So when I talk about rituals, then it is about, like, again, in the early stage, you can just pick up the phone with your co-founder and one other person, you do a quick huddle, scrappy, get it done, right? When you're in the growth stage, then it becomes more about the delegation. So now you have to have like some decision frameworks that in place, like how do decisions in this organization get made? And if the answer is everything rolls up to the CEO, that's where the bottleneck is, right? So what is that structured decision making process and framework? And that, I know, looks different for every single company and every organization. So it's designing what works best for you. And then when you're scaling and it's about sustainable growth, then this is where like the team alignment, the cross-functional conversations, how do those things happen? How are you making sure that the one-on-ones are being effective, not just like, oh my gosh, I have another one-on-one and I secretly hoping that it gets canceled because you know and the other person knows it's not a productive use of your time,
It's
right?
not
So I just
productive.
use
No.
yeah, I use one-on-ones because oftentimes that's one of the first places when I go and do an assessment with a company. I notice communication does not trickle down because those one-on-ones are either non-existent or pretty ineffective.
Yeah. I love that you talk about it in terms of rituals. I think, good habits are what these companies really,
Yeah.
really need, and especially as they evolve. And putting it into a ritual just sounds so positive and reaffirming. So I'm going to steal that. So as we talk about resources, in your experience, what have been the resources that are the most impactful? Like if a founder is like, I need help, what do you suggest for them to go in and advise by?
Yeah, so in terms of resources, I use Clarity as my anchor, and that's because oftentimes when the founders are having a conversation with you or me at that stage, something in the business is not working. And what we said talked about earlier, which is at the end of the day, because you're so close to the problem itself, you may not be able to see what's going on. So the first thing that I do is really want to understand what is the North Star? How do we get clarity on what is the problem to be solving? And then what have you already tried, right? It's not about reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
People in the company, the CEO is smart, the founder is smart, the team that they're leading are very smart as well. So what have they already tried, and how can folks like you and I come in with a fresh perspective and try to do something different and see how they get a different result. And then in terms of the resources, I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the leadership training and coaching around the mindset, right? If the culture is where failure is frowned upon or people have consequences, then you are not going to try something different, and
Right.
that is the first thing that we need to address within an organization. If communication is something that is not supported, and feedback is not something that is encouraged in an organization, then you will not hear about all the things that are happening and not going well until you have that mega fire drill, and then now everybody is in damage control mode. So those
Right.
are just again things that I feel that it's really about the clarity, and it's about the communication. And then once you have those things, understanding where the alignment needs to happen, is the team rowing in the same direction? If not, what do we need to do about that? And then how are we making sure that everyone understands what are the rhythms and rituals that will help them succeed and maintain their energy so that they're actually having fun at work? Wouldn't that be nice?
Wow, what a concept. People that like to go to work.
I know.
What we all aspire
You
our
would love
teams
it.
to be like.
Yes. Yes. I'm all about
So,
trying to figure out how to have more fun at work.
absolutely. That's the best part is when everybody enjoys being there. And I know it's hard, and I think as a society we've gotten to a point where everybody's just miserable and they just say it is what it is. And I feel like we can make a turn. We can change that.
We can, yeah, yeah, yeah. It starts with
So,
understanding what's important to you, how you
yeah.
get energized, motivated, and go from there.
Well, and surrounding yourself with the people, at the company that, believe in that vision and believe in that, so that you're hiring the people that are all motivated to do those things. If you have a bunch of
Exactly.
people who have different motivations, they're not going to be invigorated when you talk about where the company is going and how we're going to get there. But that's because they're not aligned. And you talk about putting the right people in the right seats. Well, if you have a bunch of team members that are motivated, in a different manner, they may not fit like a very scrappy. Maybe they're only motivated by stability and
Hmm.
money. They're probably not a good
Hmm.
fit for your scrappy growing startup, and that's okay.
Exactly.
There will be a time when you want those team members, but right now,
Hmm.
you're going to end up with a bunch of people who are miserable
Yeah. You said it
and
all.
unmotivatable.
That's a term. I'll use that.
Yeah, I coined it. It's mine now. You can have it. Um, as we kind of move into last final thoughts, as we're talking to these founders that are leading through this evolving journey of building their business and moving through these stages, what is one piece of advice that you would say if you don't listen to anything else, if you just follow this one thing, you'll at least be set on the right track? What would that be?
I would just say, keeping with the theme, embrace the evolution, you know. Your business is going to keep evolving, and as a leader, as a CEO, you must evolve as well, and so must your leadership style, right? And we talked
Yeah.
a lot about those different styles of leadership as the company scales. And to me, having that care framework, clarity, alignment, rhythms, and energy at the center. When you have clarity and alignment first, those rhythms and energy will flow. And energy is really how you get execution within the organization. So I would say just, yeah, embrace the evolution.
I love that. And for those of you watching the YouTube, I don't know if you did this on purpose, Tanjina, but I swear that artwork behind you should like spell out care at the top of it, because I feel like it's like the perfect symbol of that.
Oh, I love it. Thank
So
you for saying
for
that.
those of you who aren't, go watch the YouTube so you can see the artwork behind Tanjina. Well, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. For those of you here, it's been another episode of Building Up Your Business, the podcast. Thank you, Tanjina, really.
Thank you, Erica. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. And my name is Erica Dill with Operationally Up. I am your host. We have an episode coming every 2 weeks, so we'll be back here in another 2 weeks with another great pro. So remember, from bombs to order fulfillment, marketing to taxes, learn the stuff from the pros before you step in it. We'll see you soon. Until then, have a wonderful week.